How did a quiet mechanic become the moment an entire wedding froze? They thought I would hide my old car and walk in like I didn't belong. Instead, I interrupted their lunch by driving a massive tractor into the courtyard, and no one knew what to say. But before we go any further, take a second to subscribe, hit the hype button, and like the video. It really helps the channel grow. And tell us in the comments, what would you do in this situation? 3 weeks before the wedding, my daughter Mina sat across from me in my kitchen. She had that look, the one where she's already decided something but hasn't figured out how to tell me yet. I knew that look. I'd been seeing it more often lately. "Dad," she said, wrapping both hands around her coffee mug like she needed something to hold on to, "I need to ask you something." I waited. The kitchen was quiet, except for the hum of the old refrigerator. Morning light came through the window over the sink, hitting the worn linoleum in a way that made everything look softer than it was. "It's about the wedding," she continued, "about Saturday." "I'll be there," I said. "Wouldn't miss it." She nodded, but her eyes didn't quite meet mine. "I know, I know you'll be there. It's just—" She took a breath. "Grant's family has certain expectations about how things should look, how things should be." I stayed quiet, let her find the words. "The estate where we're having the reception. It's really formal, really nice, and his mother has been planning every detail for months." Mina's fingers tightened on the mug. "She's very particular about appearances." "Okay," I said, and I was thinking. She finally looked up at me. "Your car, the Civic. It's pretty old, Dad, and the paint is kind of faded, and I thought maybe you could park it somewhere else, down the road, and just walk up to the estate. It's not far, maybe half a mile." The refrigerator hummed. A bird called outside. I looked at my daughter and saw something I didn't like. Shame. Not for herself. For me. "You want me to hide my car?" I said. "Not hide, just park it somewhere less visible. Please, Dad, I know it sounds stupid. But Grant's family, they're not like us. They care about these things. And I don't want them to think—" She trailed off. "Think what?" "I don't know. That you're—" She didn't finish. Didn't need to. I took a sip of my own coffee. It had gone lukewarm. "So I park down the road and walk in. Would that be okay? I know it's a lot to ask, but it would just make things easier, for everyone." I thought about that word. Everyone. Wondered if I was included in everyone, or if I was the exception they were trying to manage. "Sure," I said. "I can do that." Relief washed over her face. Thank you so much, Dad. I know it's weird. I know it doesn't make sense, but it means a lot." She stood up, came around the table, kissed the top of my head like I was the child, and she was the parent. Then she left, and I sat there in my kitchen for a long time, looking at the empty chair across from me. That was Tuesday. Wednesday, I went to work like always. The Agricultural Service Center sat on the edge of town, a big metal building with 3 bay doors and a gravel lot that turned to mud when it rained. Owen Price and I had built it from nothing 26 years ago. Back then, it was just a shed and a dream. Now we serviced everything from combine harvesters to irrigation systems for farms across 3 counties. I pulled in at 7 in the morning. Owen's truck was already there. Inside, the familiar smell of motor oil and welding smoke wrapped around me like a blanket. This was where I made sense, where things had clear problems and clear solutions. A busted hydraulic line either held pressure or it didn't. A seized bearing either turned or it didn't. No ambiguity, no appearances to manage. Owen was under a tiller attachment, working on the drive shaft. He slid out when he heard my footsteps. "Morning," he said. "Morning." He wiped his hands on a rag that hadn't been clean in years. "Big weekend coming up?" "Yeah." "You ready for all that fancy nonsense?" I grabbed my coveralls from the hook. "Ready as I'll be." Owen watched me for a moment. We'd known each other long enough that silence said plenty. Finally, he asked, "They treating you right? Grant's people?" "They're treating me like what I am," I said, "the father of the bride who fixes tractors for a living." "Nothing wrong with fixing tractors." "I know that." "You know that?" I pulled on the coveralls. "But we're not the ones who need convincing." Owen went back under the tiller. His voice echoed off the concrete floor. "You ever think about reminding them? About what you actually do here? What you actually own? Every day. But you won't." "Not my style," I said. "Maybe it should be." I didn't answer. Instead, I went to the parts warehouse in the back. Row after row of shelves holding everything from spark plugs to transmission housings. I'd organized this place myself. knew where every part belonged, could find a specific bolt in the dark if I had to. This was real. This was mine. Half of it, anyway. Owen and I were equal partners, 50-50 split on everything. The building, the equipment, the contracts. But nobody knew that. Not Grant, not his mother Elaine, not even Mina, really. She knew I worked here. Knew I'd worked here her whole life. But the details, the ownership structure, that had never come up, never seemed important. Until now. I found the hydraulic seals Owen needed and brought them back to the bay. He was still under the tiller, muttering at a stubborn bolt. "Owen," I said. "Yeah? When did Mina start pulling away?" The ratchet stopped clicking. Silence for a beat. Then Owen slid back out and sat up, leaning against the tiller's tire. "That's a heavy question for a Wednesday morning," he said. "I know." He thought about it. "I'd say about 2 years ago, right around when she started dating Grant. Before that, she used to come by the shop, bring lunch sometimes, ask about jobs. Remember?" I did remember. She'd sit in my office eating sandwiches and asking questions about invoices and inventory, saying maybe she'd join the business someday, maybe take it over when Owen and I retired. "She stopped coming," I said. "She did." And I didn't say anything. Owen shrugged. "What were you going to say? Your boyfriend's too rich for our dirty garage?" That wouldn't have gone over well. "Maybe I should have said it anyway." "Maybe." Owen stood up, brushed off his pants. "But you're not that kind of father. You let her make her own choices, even when they take her away from you." That landed harder than I expected. I turned away, focused on sorting through a bin of washers that didn't need sorting. "Dean," Owen said quietly, "you still going quietly? To the wedding?" I kept sorting washers. "That's the plan." "The parking down the road plan? How'd you know about that?" "Mina told my wife. My wife told me. We're all connected, you know that." I finally looked at him. "And?" "And nothing. It's your call. But I'll say this. I've watched you eat every indignity they've served up. Every little comment. Every assumption that you're just the mechanic dad who doesn't quite fit. And you've taken it. Because you love Mina. Because you want her to be happy." He paused. "But maybe there's a point where taking it stops being love and starts being surrender." "What's the difference?" "Love protects what matters. Surrender just gives up." I didn't have an answer for that, so I went back to work, and we didn't talk about it again. But his words stayed with me, circled in my head like water going down a drain. That afternoon, I got a call from Mina. She was crying. "Dad, I'm so sorry." My chest tightened. "What happened?" "Nothing happened. I feel terrible. About the car thing. About asking you to hide. It's not fair. You shouldn't have to do that." "It's okay," I said. "I already told you I would. But it's not okay. It's not right. And I should have stood up for you. I should have told Grant's mom that my father drives whatever he wants to drive, and if she doesn't like it, she can look the other way." She sniffed hard. "But I didn't. I caved. Because I'm scared." "Scared of what?" "Of them thinking less of me, of Grant seeing me differently, of not belonging in their world." Her voice cracked. "I hate that I care about that. But I do." I closed my eyes. Wished I could reach through the phone and hug her like I did when she was little. When the world was smaller and I could fix her problems with a bandage and a popsicle. "Mina," I said, "you belong anywhere you choose to belong. Don't let anyone tell you different." "I know, I want this to work. I want us all to get along. And if hiding your car for one day makes that easier, then maybe it's worth it." "Then we'll hide the car," I said, "and it'll be fine." She exhaled shakily. "Thank you, Dad. I love you." "Love you too, sweetheart." After she hung up, I sat in my office for a long time, staring at the walls. They were covered in calendars from parts suppliers and faded photos of machinery we'd worked on over the years. This was my world, small, functional, honest, and apparently not good enough for the Mercers. Thursday passed, then Friday. That evening I drove past the wedding estate. I couldn't help myself. 20 minutes outside town, hidden behind iron gates and a long oak-lined driveway. A stone house with tall, glowing windows. White tents on the lawn. A stage. Rows of chairs. I didn't stop, just slowed down and looked. This was where my daughter would marry Grant Mercer. The world she was stepping into, and I was the guest they wanted hidden. Saturday morning came cold and bright. I woke at 5:30 out of habit and lay staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle. Mina grew up here. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen frozen in 1987. Her mother and I bought the house before Mina was born, fixed it ourselves, built a swing set she used until she was 12. Her mother was gone now, 8 years, cancer. Mina had been 16. Now she was 24, marrying into a family that owned half the county. I got up, made coffee, showered, and put on the charcoal suit Mina had helped me choose. She said it made me look distinguished. I'd laughed. By 10, I stood in the mirror, adjusting my tie. 52 years old, gray hair, lines around the eyes, hands permanently stained from years of grease, a working man's hands. Outside, my old Civic waited. 20 years old, still reliable. It could get me anywhere, just not where I was meant to be seen. I drove toward the estate, but pulled off onto a dirt road before the gates, parking under trees half a mile away, like Mina suggested. Turned off the engine, sat in silence, hands on the wheel. This was the moment I chose to be invisible. I thought about Owen's words, love versus surrender. Then I got out and walked. The estate road was flawless. Smooth asphalt, white fences, horses in distant fields. Picture perfect. Everything fit. Except me. The gates were open when I arrived, and a young woman with a clipboard greeted me. She wore black and white, professional smile, fixed in place. Name, please. Dean Calix. She scanned her list. Father of the bride. Yes. Welcome. She gestured toward the path leading around the main house. The ceremony will begin in about 40 minutes. Guests are gathering by the garden terrace. There's a cocktail area if you'd like something to drink. Thank you. I followed the path. More guests were arriving. Couples in expensive clothes, laughing and greeting each other like old friends. I recognized nobody. They recognized nobody when they looked at me either, but their eyes slid past without interest. Just another guest. Probably someone's uncle. Nobody important. The garden terrace was stunning. I had to admit that. White chairs set up in rows facing an archway covered in flowers. Beyond it, the lawn stretched out toward a lake that reflected the sky like polished glass. Elegant. Beautiful. Exactly the kind of place Grant Mercer would choose to get married. I spotted Elaine Mercer near the front, directing people with small, efficient gestures. She wore a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. Her hair was perfect. Her posture was perfect. Everything about her screamed control. She saw me. Our eyes met for half a second. Then she turned away, back to whatever she was orchestrating. No greeting, no acknowledgement. Just the confirmation that I was exactly what she expected. Forgettable. I found a seat toward the back. Not in the family section. Those were marked with small signs, but close enough that I could see. Other guests filtered in. The seats filled up. Music started playing, something classical that I didn't recognize. Then Mina appeared. She walked down the aisle on the arm of Grant's father, Harold Mercer, tall and silver-haired, smiling like he was personally delivering her to his son. She wore white, simple and elegant, holding a bouquet of pale roses. Her face was radiant, and she wasn't looking at me. Her eyes were forward, locked on Grant, who stood at the altar in a perfectly tailored tuxedo. Handsome, confident. Every inch the successful heir. The ceremony began. Words were spoken, vows were exchanged. Rings were slipped onto fingers. And through it all, I sat in my seat, silent and still, watching my daughter become someone else's family. When the officiant said, "You may now kiss the bride," the crowd erupted in applause. Mina and Grant kissed, turned to face everyone, walked back down the aisle together, smiling and waving. Mina's eyes found mine as she passed. She smiled, gave me a small nod. That was all. Then she was gone, swept away by the crowd moving toward the reception area. I stood up slowly, followed the flow of guests around the house toward a massive white tent set up on the lawn. Inside, round tables were draped in white linens, crystal glasses, china plates, flower arrangements that probably cost more than my weekly income. I found my assigned seat. Table 17, near the back, surrounded by people I didn't know, friends of Grant's family, I guessed. They introduced themselves politely, asked generic questions. How did I know the bride? Oh, you're the father. How wonderful. What do you do? Oh, you work with farm equipment? How interesting. That last part always came with a slight pause, a recalibration. Interesting meant not interesting at all. It meant we won't ask follow-up questions. I ate the salad when it arrived, drank the wine they poured, listened to the conversations around me about vacation homes and investment portfolios and country club renovations, nodded when it seemed appropriate. I was there, present, visible, but not really. At the head table, Mina sat beside Grant, laughing at something his mother was saying. She looked happy, genuinely happy. And that was what mattered, right? That was what I kept telling myself. After the meal, the speeches began. Grant's father stood up and talked about family and legacy and how proud he was to welcome Mina into the Mercer fold. Elaine followed, speaking about love and commitment and the beautiful future ahead. Nobody asked me to speak. That was fine. I hadn't expected to. But watching everyone toast to Grant and Mina, watching the room full of people celebrate without any acknowledgement of who raised her, who supported her, who loved her first, that stung in a way I hadn't anticipated. Then came the first dance. Grant and Mina moved onto the floor, and the band played something slow and romantic. Everyone watched, smiling. The photographer circled them, capturing every angle. When the song ended, the bandleader announced the father-daughter dance. Finally. I stood up, started moving toward the floor. But before I got there, Grant's father stepped in, offered his hand to Mina. She hesitated, looked around, looking for me, I hoped, but Harold was already pulling her into the dance. "Just for a moment," he said into the microphone, "to officially welcome her to our family." The crowd applauded. Mina danced with Harold, smiled up at him, and I stood there, halfway to the floor, suddenly uncertain where I belonged. When the song ended, Mina finally broke away, came to me, took my hand. "Sorry, Dad," she whispered. "That was weird?" "It's fine," I said. We danced. Badly, on my part. I'd never been graceful. But she didn't seem to mind. Just rested her head on my shoulder for a moment. And for those few minutes, it was like when she was little, before Grant, before the Mercers, before any of this. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For everything, for being here, for understanding." "Always," I said. The song ended. She kissed my cheek. Then Grant appeared, took her hand, and they disappeared into the crowd of well-wishers. I went back to table 17. Nobody at the table had noticed I'd been gone. The reception continued through the afternoon. Champagne flowed, the band played, people danced and laughed and took endless photos. I stayed at my table, nursing a drink, watching it all unfold like a play I had tickets to but wasn't actually in. At some point, I got up to use the restroom. The main house was open for guests, and I followed signs down a hallway lined with family portraits, generations of Mercers staring down from gilded frames. Old money, established names, the kind of lineage that came with expectations. I found the restroom, took care of business, washed my hands. When I came back out, I heard voices coming from a side corridor. Low, intense. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but sound carries in these old houses. "He needs to stay out of the main photos," someone said. A woman's voice. "Elaine." "I already talked to the photographer," another voice replied. Male. Smooth. I didn't recognize it. "Family portraits only. Dean Calix won't be in those." "Good. The last thing we need is someone looking at our wedding album and asking who the mechanic is." Silence. Then the man spoke again. "Is he causing problems?" "No. He's been manageable, quiet. Exactly what we needed him to be." Elaine's voice softened slightly. "I almost feel bad. Mina loves him. But honestly, Beck, he just doesn't fit. You know what I mean?" "I do." "Grant thinks we're being too harsh. But Grant doesn't understand optics. Not yet. He will, once he takes over more of the family business. Appearances matter. Who you're associated with matters. And having a father-in-law who shows up in coveralls smelling like motor oil, that sends a message. So you keep him at arm's length." "Exactly. Respectful distance. He gets to be here. He gets to walk his daughter down the aisle. Well, Harold did that, but still, he's included. Just not featured." I stood frozen in the hallway, hand on the wall for balance. Manageable. Quiet. The words echoed in my skull. "What about the tractor situation?" Beck asked. "I heard he owns some machinery." "He works with machinery," Elaine corrected. "There's a difference. He's an employee at some service shop. Probably makes decent money for his bracket, but it's not like he owns anything significant." "You're sure?" "Positive. I had Grant look into it. Dean Calix. No major assets, no investments, nothing that would complicate the family portfolio, just a modest house and an old car he was smart enough to hide today." They laughed, actually laughed. I turned and walked back the way I'd come, quick and quiet, before they could round the corner and find me there. My heart was hammering, my face was hot. Back outside, the party continued oblivious. I found my table again, sat down, stared at the champagne glass in front of me without seeing it. An employee at some service shop. No major assets. Nothing significant. I'd built that shop from the ground up, worked 80-hour weeks for years to make it profitable, expanded the client base, bought equipment, hired people, owned 50% of a business that cleared multiple six figures annually. But they didn't know that, because I'd never told them, because I'd let them assume, let them see the coveralls and the greasy hands and the old car, and fill in the blanks themselves. And they'd filled in wrong, but I'd never corrected them. Why? Because Mina asked me not to make waves, because I wanted her to be happy, because I thought being small would make things easier, but it hadn't made things easier. It had made me invisible. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through contacts, found Owen's number, texted him. "You at the shop?" 3 dots appeared. Then, "Yeah, why?" "I need you to check something for me." "Shoot." "The Massey Ferguson, the big one, Model 8S 245. Who's it registered to?" Long pause. Then, "You know who it's registered to?" "Remind me." "You, solo. Not the company. You bought it outright 3 years ago for the estate contracts. Been sitting in the yard ever since." I stared at the phone. The tractor. I'd forgotten about that. Sort of. Not really. But I hadn't thought about it in concrete terms. It was just equipment. Just part of the inventory. Except it wasn't inventory. It was mine. "Dean?" Owen's text popped up. "You okay?" I typed back, "I'm fine, thanks." Another pause. Then, "Whatever you're thinking, be smart." I pocketed the phone without responding. The rest of the reception blurred together. More dancing, more speeches, the cake cutting, the bouquet toss, everything moving exactly as planned, choreographed down to the minute. As the sun started to set, the photographer gathered people for group shots, family photos. Elaine was right. I wasn't in them. Mina posed with Grant's parents, with Grant's siblings, with the whole Mercer clan, 3 generations deep. I stood off to the side, watching. Then Beck appeared beside me. Up close, he was older than his voice suggested, maybe mid-50s, with the kind of tan that came from golf courses and the kind of confidence that came from always getting his way. "Dean Calix," he said, extending a hand. "Beck Hale. I'm coordinating today's event." I shook his hand. His grip was firm, practiced. "Beautiful ceremony," I said. "Thank you. We worked hard to make it perfect." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I hope you're enjoying yourself." "I am." "Good, good." He glanced toward the photo session. "Listen, I wanted to make sure you're comfortable. I know these events can be a bit overwhelming. Lots of people you don't know. Formal atmosphere. Not everyone's cup of tea." "I'm fine," I said. "Of course. Of course." He lowered his voice slightly. "Between you and me, I think you've been a real class act today. Staying in the background, not making a fuss. That takes maturity. A lot of fathers, they want to be center stage. But you get it. You understand this day is about Mina and Grant." "It is," I agreed. "Exactly. And honestly, it's refreshing." He clapped me on the shoulder. "You're a good man, Dean. Mina's lucky to have you." He walked away before I could respond. A good man. Because I stayed in the background. Because I didn't make a fuss. I looked at the group photo happening on the lawn. Mina stood in the middle, surrounded by Mercers, smiling at the camera. She looked like she belonged there. Maybe she did. But did that mean I didn't? The reception wound down as evening settled in. Guests started leaving, calling for cars, saying their goodbyes. Mina and Grant stood at the entrance to the tent, shaking hands and hugging people, playing the part of the happy couple perfectly. I waited until the crowd thinned, then approached. "Dad," Mina said, breaking away to hug me. "Thank you for today. It meant the world having you here." "Wouldn't have missed it," I said. Grant shook my hand. "Thanks for coming, Dean. Great day, right?" "Great day," I echoed. "Hey, we're doing brunch tomorrow at the house before we leave for the honeymoon. You should come. 11-ish. Nothing fancy. Just family." I looked at Mina. She nodded encouragingly. "I'll try to make it," I said. "Cool. See you then." Grant was already turning to the next guest. Mina squeezed my hand. "Love you, Dad." "Love you too." I walked back down the estate road, alone in the fading light. The trees cast long shadows across the asphalt. Somewhere behind me, music still played faintly, but it felt miles away. My car sat where I'd left it, half hidden under the trees. I climbed in, started the engine, sat there for a moment with my hands on the wheel, then I drove home. The house was dark and quiet when I arrived. I parked in the driveway, went inside, turned on the lights. Everything looked the same as it had that morning. Same furniture, same photos on the walls, same coffee mug I'd left in the sink. But something felt different. I changed out of the suit, hung it in the closet, put on jeans and an old flannel shirt. Better. More like myself. And then I sat at the kitchen table and thought about what came next. Tomorrow was Sunday. Mina and Grant were leaving Monday for 2 weeks in Europe. After that, they'd move into the condo Grant's parents bought them downtown, start their new life together. Mina would begin working at Grant's father's investment firm, a position that had been offered, not earned, but she'd accepted it eagerly. And I would go back to the service center, back to fixing tractors, back to being exactly what I'd always been. Unless. I pulled out my phone again, scrolled through my contacts, found Marla Benson. Marla was a lawyer, the kind who handled both family law and commercial contracts. Owen and I had used her when we'd formalized the partnership structure years ago. She was precise, professional, didn't waste time. I texted her. Need to talk. Can we meet Monday morning? Her response came within minutes. 8 a.m. at my office. What's this about? I hesitated, then typed, ownership verification, records, nothing urgent. See you Monday. I put the phone down. What was I doing? I wasn't sure yet. But I knew I was done being manageable. Sunday morning, I woke up early despite sleeping poorly, drove to the service center. Owen's truck was already there. He spent most Sundays doing maintenance work we couldn't fit in during the week. Inside, he was replacing filters on one of the irrigation pumps. He looked up when I walked in. How was it? He asked. It was fine. That doesn't sound fine. I grabbed a wrench, started helping him with the filters. They're good at what they do, the Mercers, making everything look perfect, making sure everyone plays their part. And what part did you play? The grateful father who knows his place. Owen grunted. You talked to Mina? Briefly. She's happy. That's what matters. But I tightened a bolt, checked the seal. But I overheard her new mother-in-law talking about me, explaining how I'm manageable, how I don't fit their image, how I work with machinery, not own it. They don't know about the partnership? No. You going to tell them? I don't know yet. We worked in silence for a while, the rhythmic clank of tools, the hiss of compressed air, comfortable sounds. Finally, Owen said, You know, when we started this place, you told me something. You said the point of building something was so nobody could take it away, so you'd always have ground to stand on, remember? I did remember. I'd been 36. Mina was 10. Her mother was sick, but we didn't know how sick yet. And I'd been terrified of the future, of not being able to provide, not being able to protect her. You built that ground, Owen continued. You own it, literally. This building, this business, that equipment out there, half of it's yours. And if people don't know that, maybe it's time to show them. How? You'll figure it out. He wiped his hands on a rag. But do it soon, before you forget you're allowed to take up space. Later that morning, I drove to Grant's parents' house for the brunch. Another estate, though smaller than the wedding venue. Still impressive. 3 stories, brick facade, circular driveway. I rang the doorbell. A housekeeper answered, led me through to a sunroom where the family had gathered. Mina, Grant, Elaine, Harold, a couple of Grant's siblings I'd met briefly at the wedding. Dean! Harold boomed. Come in, grab a plate. The table was loaded with food. Eggs, bacon, pastries, fresh fruit, coffee. Everyone was casual, relaxed, post-wedding glow still lingering. I fixed a plate, found a seat. The conversation flowed around me. Honeymoon plans, wedding highlights, funny moments from the reception. Elaine sat across from me, sipping coffee. Dean, we didn't get much chance to talk yesterday. How are you? I'm well, thank you. Mina tells me you have your own business, farm equipment. Agricultural Service Center, I said. Owen Price and I co-own it. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. Co-own? I didn't realize you were a partner. 50-50 split. Have been for 26 years. Grant looked up from his eggs. Really? I thought you worked there. I do work there, I said. But I also own half of it. Silence around the table, just for a beat. Then Harold jumped in with a hearty laugh. Well, that's wonderful. Good for you, Dean. Small business ownership, backbone of America. Small business. The qualifier landed exactly how he meant it to. Mina was watching me carefully. She knew that tone, knew I was holding something back. I took a bite of eggs, swallowed. We service most of the farms in 3 counties, handle everything from routine maintenance to complete overhauls, equipment sales, parts distribution, seasonal contracts. Sounds like quite an operation, Elaine said politely. It is. You must stay very busy. We do. The conversation moved on. Plans for Thanksgiving, Christmas gift ideas. I let it wash over me, participating minimally. When brunch ended, I said my goodbyes. hugged Mina, shook Grant's hand. Safe travels, I told them. Thanks, Dad. We'll send you pictures. I drove back home, called Marla again, confirmed our Monday morning meeting, then spent the rest of Sunday doing nothing in particular, watched TV, read the paper, tried not to think too much. But I kept coming back to the same question. What was I trying to prove? And to who? Monday morning, I arrived at Marla Benson's office at 7:55. She practiced out of a converted house downtown, 2 stories, white paint, a neat sign by the door that read Benson Law, Family and Commercial Practice. Her assistant let me in, a young woman who smiled politely and gestured toward the waiting area. The office smelled like coffee and old books. Legal journals lined the shelves. Framed diplomas hung on the walls. Marla met me in the small conference room within minutes, shaking my hand firmly. She wore a navy suit, her dark hair pulled back in a professional bun. Sharp eyes that seemed to see through people. Dean, it's been a while. It has, I said. She gestured to a chair across from a polished wooden table. So what's this about? Ownership verification? I sat down, set my hands on the table. I need copies of the partnership documents, the ones that show Owen and I co-own the service center. That's easy enough. She pulled out a legal pad, made a note. But why now? Is there a dispute? I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. Recent events have made me realize that people make assumptions about what I do and what I own. I'd like to have documentation ready in case those assumptions need correcting. Marla studied me for a moment, her pen hovering over the pad. She was in her mid-40s, sharp-eyed, the kind of person who missed nothing. We'd known each other for years. She'd handled the partnership paperwork when Owen and I formalized our arrangement back in the late 90s. This is about your daughter's wedding, she said. Not a question, a statement. Partially. Did someone challenge your ownership? Question your stake in the business? No, but they don't know about it, and I think it's time they did. She set down the pen, leaned back in her chair. Okay, tell me what happened. So I did. Not everything, but enough. The request to hide my car, the seat at table 17, the overheard conversation in the hallway, the way Beck Hale had praised me for staying in the background, the family photos I wasn't included in. Marla listened without interrupting, her expression growing more serious with each detail. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, You know, Dean, in all the years I've known you, I've never seen you assert yourself. You're always steady, calm, agreeable. But there's a difference between being easygoing and being a doormat. I know. Do you? She looked up, meeting my eyes. Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you've let people underestimate you for a long time. And that's fine, if it's strategic. If you're choosing to fly under the radar for a specific reason. But if it's just habit, if you're doing it because you think that's what you're supposed to do, that's a problem. It was habit, I admitted. But it's not anymore. She smiled, a slight upturn at the corner of her mouth. Good. Hold that feeling. She opened her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. Give me 10 minutes. I'll print everything. Partnership agreement, incorporation documents, tax records showing your income from the business, property deeds for the building, business insurance policies, everything that proves you own 50% of a profitable operation. Thank you. You're welcome. But Dean? She looked up from the screen. What are you planning to do with these documents? Just have them as backup? Or are you thinking about something more public? I didn't answer right away. Wasn't sure I knew the answer myself yet. She continued typing, not waiting for my response. Because if you're just looking to correct the record in conversation, fine. Show them the papers. Explain the situation. But if you're thinking about making a statement, really making a point that they can't dismiss or explain away, then you need to be strategic about it. What do you mean? She paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard. I mean that sometimes the best way to correct an assumption isn't to tell people they're wrong. It's to show them. Make it impossible to ignore. Make it so obvious that they have to acknowledge reality whether they want to or not. How? The printer hummed to life in the corner of the room. Page after page of documents, contracts, financial statements, legal proof of everything I'd built over the last 2.5 decades. Marla stood up, walked over to the printer, started organizing the sheets as they emerged. You know the old saying, the best revenge is living well, but sometimes the second best revenge is making sure everyone knows you're living well, especially the people who assumed you weren't. She brought the stack of papers back to the table, began sorting them into categories. What assets do you have that are undeniably yours, something visible, something they'd recognize, something that would make a statement without you having to say a word? I thought about the shop, the equipment, the client contracts that brought in steady income year after year. Then I thought about the tractor. I own a Massey Ferguson 8S245, I said slowly. Registered in my name only, not the company's, not joint ownership, just mine. I bought it outright 3 years ago for a specific set of contracts. It's worth about $200,000. Marla's eyebrows rose. That's a serious piece of equipment. It is. It's mobile. Very. Drives like a tank, but it moves. She smiled, wider this time. Then I think you have your answer. You think I should drive a tractor to their next family event. I think you should consider all your options. But yes, if you want to make a statement that they can't ignore, can't dismiss, can't explain away, showing up in a $200,000 piece of machinery that's registered in your name only would certainly do that. I sat with that for a moment, pictured it, the massive red tractor rolling up the estate driveway, the sound of the diesel engine, the looks on their faces. Wouldn't that be inappropriate? Probably. But was it appropriate for them to exclude you from family photos, to mock your car behind your back, to treat you like a problem to be managed rather than a person to be respected? She shook her head. Sometimes inappropriate is exactly what's needed. We talked for another 20 minutes. She gave me advice, legal boundaries, how to stay on the right side of public spectacle versus harassment, how to make a point without giving them grounds to claim I was causing a disturbance or trespassing, how to frame it as simply arriving for an event I'd been invited to, just in an unexpected vehicle. If they invited you to a luncheon, you have every right to attend, she said, and unless they specified mode of transportation in the invitation, you can arrive however you choose, in a car, on foot, or in agricultural equipment worth more than most people's houses. When I left her office, I had the folder of documents under my arm, thick with proof of ownership, income statements, property deeds. Everything that showed Dean Calix wasn't just a mechanic, that he was a business owner, a partner, someone who'd built something substantial. And I had a plan forming in my head. I drove to the service center. The morning was warming up, clouds breaking apart to let through patches of blue sky. The gravel lot crunched under my tires as I pulled in next to Owen's truck. Inside, Owen was in the main bay, working on a combine header, a massive piece of harvesting equipment that needed new bearings and a hydraulic line replacement. He slid out from under it when he heard my footsteps, wiping his hands on a rag. "How'd it go?" he asked. I dropped the folder on his workbench, right next to his collection of wrenches. I have proof, everything documented. 26 years of partnership, all spelled out in black and white. He flipped through it, whistling low. This is every piece of paper showing you're a co-owner. Partnership agreement, tax records, property deeds, business insurance. Why'd you need all this? Because I'm done hiding, I said. Owen looked at me, really looked at me. We'd known each other long enough that he could read my moods, understand what I wasn't saying. What are you going to do? Something they can't ignore. Dean, they think I'm nobody, Owen. The words came out harder than I intended. They think I'm just the mechanic who got lucky when his daughter married up. They whisper about keeping me out of photos. They tell each other I'm manageable. They laugh about my old car. They treat me like I'm some kind of embarrassment that needs to be hidden. I know. Do you know what that feels like? To overhear your daughter's new mother-in-law explaining to someone that you don't have any significant assets? That you're just an employee? That you make decent money for your bracket, but nothing that would complicate their precious family portfolio? Owen set down the papers. I can imagine. I'm not manageable, and I'm not nobody. I built this place. We built this place. From nothing. And if they don't know that, if they can't see that, then it's time I showed them. You're talking about the luncheon next Saturday, aren't you? The family welcome thing Mina mentioned? Yes. And you're planning to make an entrance. I am. With the Massey Ferguson. Yes. He laughed. Not mockery, not disbelief. Something closer to admiration mixed with concern. You're going to drive a $200,000 tractor into their fancy luncheon. That's the plan. Dean Calix, quiet mechanic. Finally done being quiet? Finally. He shook his head, but he was smiling. You know they're going to lose their minds. I'm counting on it. We spent the rest of the day going over the tractor. It had been sitting in the equipment yard for months, used occasionally for demonstration when we had a potential buyer interested in that class of machinery, but mostly idle. We checked the engine, ran diagnostics, changed the oil, replaced the fuel filters, tested the hydraulics, every line, every seal, making sure nothing would leak or fail. Inspected the tires, 8 feet tall, thick treads, inflated to proper pressure. Everything worked perfectly. The Massey Ferguson was a beast of a machine, built to handle the kind of heavy work that would destroy lesser equipment. It could pull 30 tons, navigate rough terrain, operate in conditions that would bog down a regular vehicle, and it was mine. The rest of the week passed slowly. Tuesday through Friday felt like years, each day dragging despite staying busy with work. I went through the motions, serviced equipment, handled customer calls, managed invoices and inventory. Came home to my empty house each evening, made dinner, watched TV without really seeing it, went to bed and lay awake thinking about Saturday. Didn't tell Mina about the plan. She was still on her honeymoon anyway, sending occasional photos from Paris and Rome, the Eiffel Tower, the Colosseum, pictures of her and Grant smiling in front of famous landmarks, looking happy and carefree. Each night, I thought about backing out, about just showing up normally, parking my old Civic down the road like I had at the wedding, walking in quietly and sitting wherever they put me, about not making a scene, not causing trouble, not risking Mina's happiness or her relationship with Grant's family. But then I'd remember Elaine's voice in that hallway, manageable. And I'd remember Beck's hand on my shoulder, his condescending tone as he praised me for staying in the background. You're a good man because you don't make a fuss. No, not anymore. Saturday morning arrived gray and cold. I woke at dawn without an alarm, my body knowing this was the day even if my mind wanted to sleep through it. Made coffee in my quiet kitchen, stood at the window watching the sun try to push through the heavy clouds that hung over the town. Today was the day. I showered, taking my time under the hot water. Shaved carefully. Dressed in clean jeans, not the torn ones I wore for dirty work, but the good pair without stains or frayed hems. A flannel shirt, red and black plaid, worn but presentable. Working clothes, honest clothes. The kind of outfit that said exactly who I was. Not a suit, not dress shoes, not the costume I'd worn to blend in at the wedding, just me. Then I drove to the service center, taking the familiar route through town. The streets were quiet this early on a Saturday. A few joggers, a dog walker. The coffee shop on Main Street just opening up, the owner unlocking the door and flipping the sign to open. Normal people doing normal things. While I was about to drive a $200,000 tractor to a high society luncheon, the service center looked different in the early morning light. More mine, somehow, like seeing it with fresh eyes after years of taking it for granted. The metal building with our faded sign, the gravel lot, the equipment yard in back where the tractor waited. The Massey Ferguson sat exactly where we'd left it, huge and imposing in the gray dawn. Bright red paint that seemed to glow even without direct sunlight. 8-foot tires, each one taller than I was. A cab that sat 12 feet off the ground, with steps and handholds for climbing up. Windows all around for visibility. Controls that required experience to operate properly. This wasn't some little lawn tractor you bought at a home improvement store. This was a machine built to move earth and haul loads that would crush a normal vehicle. Professional equipment. Serious equipment. The kind of thing that represented real money and real work. And it was mine. Not the company's. Not split 50-50 with Owen. Mine alone. I walked around it slowly, running my hand along the massive tire, checking for anything obviously wrong. Then I climbed up, using the handholds, settling into the cab. The seat was worn but comfortable, the steering wheel solid in my hands. Dashboard full of gauges and switches. I fired up the engine. The diesel motor roared to life, deep and powerful. The whole frame vibrated with controlled energy, that distinctive rumble that you could feel in your chest, the kind of sound that made people look up and take notice, the kind of sound that said something serious was happening. I let it warm up, watching the temperature gauge climb, checking oil pressure, making sure everything was operational. The heater kicked in, warming the cab. Outside, exhaust puffed from the stack in white clouds. Owen appeared in the doorway of the shop. He must have heard the engine, must have known what it meant. He walked over slowly, hands in his pockets, stood looking up at me through the cab window. I rolled down the window. Cold air rushed in. "You sure about this?" he called over the engine noise. I nodded. "What are you going to say when you get there? When Elaine Mercer asks you what the hell you think you're doing?" "Nothing." "Nothing?" "I don't need to say anything. The tractor says it for me." He thought about that for a moment, then grinned. "You're going to give that woman a heart attack." "That's the idea." "Well then." He stepped back, gave a small salute. "Good luck, Dean. Make it count. Make sure they remember it." "I will." I put the tractor in gear and rolled forward. The machine moved slowly but inexorably, like a tank. Each wheel was taller than a person. Each rotation ate up ground. The engine growled like distant thunder, a sound you could hear from blocks away. I drove through town, down Main Street at about 15 miles per hour. People stopped to stare. A woman walking her dog froze on the sidewalk, mouth open. A man getting coffee through the drive-thru pointed and said something to the person in the car behind him. A kid on a bicycle pulled over to watch me pass, eyes wide. A few people waved. Old Jim Turner, who ran the hardware store, gave me a thumbs up from his front porch. He'd know what a machine like this cost. He'd understand what it represented. I kept going, following the route out of town, past the elementary school where Mina had gone, past the park where we used to feed the ducks, past the grocery store and the bank and the gas station, toward the estate. The county highway was easier, less traffic, more room. I pushed the tractor up to about 20 miles per hour, which was close to its top speed on pavement, not fast by car standards, but steady, relentless, impossible to miss or ignore. A few cars passed me, drivers slowing down to stare before accelerating away. One guy in a pickup actually pulled over to take a picture. I could see him in my mirrors, phone held up, capturing the image of this massive red tractor rolling down the highway. Let him. Let everyone see. That was the point. The estate road came into view, the same white fencing I'd walked past 2 weeks ago, the same oak trees lining the drive, the same iron gates that marked the boundary between my world and theirs, the same gates where I'd hidden my car and walked in like I was ashamed. This time, I wasn't hiding anything. I turned onto the estate road, the tractor's weight making the turn smooth and solid. No wobbling, no hesitation, just steady forward momentum. The gates were closed, but there was an intercom system mounted on a post. I pulled up next to it, stopped the tractor, left the engine running, pressed the button. A voice crackled through, female, professional. Yes, can I help you? Dean Calix, I'm here for the luncheon. A pause, longer than it should have been. I could imagine the conversation happening on the other end, someone checking a list, someone else asking if this was a joke, someone calling up to the main house to ask what to do about the tractor at the gate. The intercom crackled again. 1 moment, please. I waited, engine idling. The diesel rumble filled the air. Through the gates, I could see the estate spreading out. The main house in the distance, cars parked along the circular drive, a white tent set up on the lawn where people were already gathering. The luncheon had started. They were probably on appetizers or salads, making small talk, enjoying the kind of refined afternoon that people like the Mercers excelled at. And I was about to drive a tractor into the middle of it. The intercom crackled once more. Mr. Calix, please proceed to the main house. The gates swung open, smooth and silent on well-oiled hinges. I put the tractor in gear and drove through. The driveway curved through manicured grounds, and I followed it slowly, the tractor's massive tires crunching on the perfect gravel. Each rotation sounded like small rocks being crushed under immense weight. Because that's exactly what was happening. On either side, the estate spread out in careful elegance. Perfectly trimmed hedges, flower beds arranged in precise patterns, mature trees that had probably been here for generations. Everything designed to show wealth, stability, permanence. And here I came, rumbling through it all like some kind of mechanical intruder. Ahead, I could see people gathered on the lawn under a white tent, the same kind of tent they'd used for the wedding reception, but smaller, more intimate. Tables set up with white linens, servers moving between guests with trays, soft music playing from speakers I couldn't see. The luncheon was in full swing, probably 50 or 60 people, extended family, close friends of the Mercers. The kind of event where everyone knew everyone, where conversations flowed easily because these were people who moved in the same circles, belonged to the same clubs, understood the same unspoken rules. And they were all about to meet Dean Calix, on his terms. I steered toward the courtyard, the open area between the main house and the lawn where the tent stood. It was paved with old brick, arranged in herringbone patterns. A fountain in the center, water trickling over stone, planters with ornamental shrubs, a perfect stage. As the tractor rounded the final curve of the driveway, someone saw me, a woman in a pale blue dress, champagne glass in hand. She pointed, her mouth forming words I couldn't hear over the engine. Then another person looked, then another. Like dominoes falling, one after another. Attention shifted from polite conversation to the massive red tractor approaching the courtyard. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Heads turned. Champagne glasses paused halfway to lips. The soft music kept playing, but nobody was listening to it anymore. I pulled into the courtyard and stopped in the center, right where everyone could see, where the fountain had been providing pleasant background noise, where people probably usually admired the view or took photos. Now they'd admire the Massey Ferguson. The engine rumbled. The tractor sat there like a monument to real work, to actual achievement, to everything their world usually kept at arm's length. Bright red paint gleaming despite the gray sky. Chrome exhaust stack rising above the cab. 8-foot tires that could crush the fountain if I decided to drive over it. I let the engine idle for a moment. Let them all stare. Let it sink in what they were seeing. Then, slowly, I climbed down from the cab. The steps were high, requiring care. I took my time, using the handholds, descending one step at a time until my boots touched the brick pavement. The engine continued rumbling behind me, a constant bass note underlying everything. The courtyard was silent except for that diesel idol and the forgotten fountain. 50, maybe 60 people stood frozen, staring at me. Guests in their nice clothes, men in sport coats and slacks, women in dresses and pearls, servers holding trays of hors d'oeuvres, looking uncertain whether to keep serving or just watch. Even the musicians had stopped playing, instruments lowered, eyes wide. Elaine Mercer stood near the tent entrance, her face cycling through emotions too quickly to track. Shock, confusion, the beginning of anger. She wore a cream-colored suit, her hair perfect as always, her posture rigid with control that was rapidly slipping. Grant was beside her, mouth actually hanging open. He'd been mid-conversation with another young man, probably a friend or cousin, but now his attention was completely on me and the tractor. Harold Mercer had been seated at one of the tables, but he was halfway out of his chair now, one hand on the armrest, frozen in the act of standing up. His expression was harder to read, not quite shocked, more calculating, like he was trying to figure out what was happening and how to respond. And Mina. Mina stood at the edge of the crowd, near the tent entrance but slightly separated from Grant's family. She wore a light green dress, something she'd probably picked to fit in with this crowd. Her eyes were wide, hand covering her mouth. Not horror exactly, more like disbelief mixed with something else. Recognition, maybe? Understanding that her father had finally stopped being manageable. I walked around the tractor slowly, letting everyone take it in. The size of it, the presence of it, the sheer undeniable reality of it. This wasn't something you could ignore or dismiss or explain away. This was $200,000 of machinery sitting in their courtyard, and everyone here knew exactly what that meant. Money. Real money. Not inherited, not invested, earned. I ran my hand along one of the massive tires as I walked, feeling the thick rubber, the deep treads. Solid. Real. Mine. Then I turned to face them all. The silence was complete now. Even the fountain seemed quieter. Every eye was on me. "Good afternoon," I said. My voice carried across the courtyard, clear and steady. No microphone needed. Just me speaking into the shocked silence. "I'm Dean Calix, father of the bride. Some of you might remember me from the wedding 2 weeks ago." Nobody spoke, nobody moved. They just stared. "I thought I'd bring something to the luncheon," I continued. "Something to share. Something that represents who I am, what I do, what I own." I gestured to the tractor behind me, standing there like a red monument. "This is a Massey Ferguson 8S2245. Top of the line. One of the best pieces of agricultural equipment you can buy. Worth about $200,000. It's registered in my name, not a company's name, not a joint ownership situation. Mine. Dean Calix. I bought it with money I earned from my business, the Agricultural Service Center I co-own with my partner, Owen Price." Elaine found her voice, though it came out strained. "What do you think you're doing?" "I'm being visible," I said simply. "I'm taking up space. I'm reminding everyone here that just because I work with my hands doesn't mean I'm nobody. Just because I don't wear expensive suits or belong to country clubs doesn't mean I'm broke. Just because I'm quiet doesn't mean I'm manageable." Her face went pale. The color seemed to drain from it. "You told Beck Hale I was manageable," I said, looking directly at her. "At the wedding. In the hallway while I was in the restroom. You said I don't fit your image, that I'm just an employee at some service shop, that I have no significant assets, that I make decent money for my bracket, but nothing that would complicate the family portfolio." "I never," she started. "I heard you," I interrupted, "in the hallway. Every word. You and Beck talking about how to keep me out of photos, how to make sure I stayed in the background, how to manage the problem of Mina's mechanic father." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. A few people looked at Elaine, then back at me, then at their champagne glasses like they wished they were somewhere else. "And you were wrong," I continued. "About all of it. I'm not an employee. I'm a co-owner. 50-50 partner with Owen Price in a business we built from nothing 26 years ago. I'm not broke. I'm not barely making ends meet. I own property. I own equipment. I have contracts with farms across 3 counties. And this tractor," I gestured to it again, "this is just one example." I turned to face the whole crowd now, making eye contact with different people. Some looked uncomfortable, avoiding my gaze. Some looked fascinated, like they were watching a show. A few were already filming on their phones, holding them up to capture this moment. Good. Let them film. Let them share it. Let everyone see. I've spent the last 2 weeks being what everyone wanted me to be, I said, my voice steady and clear. Quiet, respectful, out of the way, understanding. I hid my car down the road at the wedding, walked half a mile so nobody would see my old Civic and think less of the Mercer family. I sat at table 17, in the back, away from the important guests. I watched my daughter get walked down the aisle by Harold instead of by me. I didn't make a fuss when the father-daughter dance got intercepted. I stayed in the background while everyone took family photos. I found Mina in the crowd. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. But love isn't making yourself small, I said, speaking directly to her. Love isn't accepting disrespect to keep the peace. And I'm done pretending that being invisible is the same as being kind. Grant stepped forward, hands up. Mr. Calix, this is really not... This is a $200,000 machine parked legally in your courtyard, I interrupted, because I own it, because I can afford it, because I built something worth building. Elaine's face was tight with barely controlled anger. You wanted to know about my assets? Here's one. Want to see the others? I've got documentation, partnership agreements, tax returns, property deeds, everything that proves I'm not just the mechanic you can pat on the head and forget about. Several people were definitely recording. I could see phones held up, pointed at me. Mina moved. She walked through the crowd, past Grant, who reached for her arm but missed. She came straight to me and threw her arms around me. Dad, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I held her. It's not your fault. It is. I asked you to heed. I was ashamed, and I shouldn't have been. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. I love you, and I'm proud of you. I should have told Grant's family from day one that my father owns a business, that he built something from nothing, that he raised me by himself. Grant approached cautiously. Mr. Calix, look, I think there's been some misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, I said. Your mother thinks I'm beneath your family. She's made that clear, and I wanted to correct that assumption. Publicly. We never meant... Yes, you did. I turned to Elaine. You wanted me manageable. You got me manageable, but that ends now. Elaine's jaw was tight. This is incredibly inappropriate. I think you should leave. I will. I looked around at everyone watching. But first, I want to make something clear. I'm not asking for your approval. I'm just asking to be acknowledged for who I actually am. I walked back to the tractor, climbed into the cab, started the engine. The diesel roar filled the courtyard, but I wasn't done yet. I stopped the tractor at the edge of the courtyard, turned it slightly so everyone could see the side panel, where the registration plate was mounted, where my name was printed in bold letters. Registered owner, Dean Calix. I let them look at it, let them read it. Then I revved the engine once, twice. The sound echoed across the estate like thunder. Elaine stepped forward, her face twisted with rage. Get that thing off my property right now. I leaned out of the cab. Your property? This is Harold's family estate. And last I checked, Mina is family now, which makes me family, whether you like it or not. Harold stood up. Something shifted in his expression, something that looked almost like respect. Let him finish, Harold said quietly. I climbed down from the cab one more time, walked to the center of the courtyard, faced them all. I built my business from nothing, I said. 26 years of work. I raised my daughter alone after my wife passed. I taught her to value honest work and real achievement, not just inherited wealth and empty status. My voice grew stronger. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of every callus on my hands. I'm proud of every machine I've fixed. I'm proud of every contract I've earned. Because I earned it. All of it. Nobody handed it to me. I looked directly at Elaine. You can whisper in hallways. You can plan your photo shoots. You can try to keep me in the background. But you can't erase me. You can't make me small. Because I'm not small. I never was. Grant tried again. Mr. Calix, please. No. I cut him off. You don't get to please me. Not after your mother spent weeks treating me like an embarrassment. I turned to Mina. You asked me to hide my car, and I did, because I love you, but I'm done hiding anything. If Grant and his family can't accept that your father is a working man who built something real, then maybe they're not the family you should be joining. Mina straightened, wiped her eyes, walked over to stand beside me. He's right, she said, her voice shaking but clear. Dad, I'm so sorry. For asking you to hide. For not standing up for you. She turned to face Elaine and Grant. My father is Dean Calix. He owns a successful business. He raised me by himself. He taught me everything that matters. And if you can't respect him, if you can't see what he's worth, then maybe we need to reconsider some things. The courtyard fell into complete silence. Grant's face went pale. Mina, you don't mean... I mean that my father deserves respect. Real respect. Elaine's composure finally cracked. This is absurd. We've welcomed you into this family. By erasing my father? Mina's voice rose. By making sure he wasn't in photos? By laughing about his car? We never. I heard you too, Elaine. At the wedding, talking to Beck. Every word. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Phones were recording everything. I put my hand on Mina's shoulder. Then I looked at the tractor. At the crowd. At the faces of people who'd spent weeks underestimating me. I climbed back into the cab one final time, started the engine. The diesel roar filled the courtyard. I leaned out the window. I came here today to make a point, I called over the engine noise, and I think I've made it. I looked at Mina. I love you. Come see me when you're ready. Then I looked at Elaine one last time. And for the record, this tractor, it's just one asset. I've got plenty more where this came from. I put the tractor in gear, drove it in a slow, deliberate circle around the entire courtyard, the massive wheels rolling over the perfect brick pavement, the engine thundering, making sure every single person saw it, making sure every single person understood exactly what Dean Calix was worth. The crowd parted like water, people scrambling back, phones held high, capturing everything. I completed the circle, stopped directly in front of Elaine one last time, revved the engine. Once, twice, 3 times. The sound was deafening, unmistakable, unforgettable. Then I drove out through the gates, back onto the estate road, the tractor's engine roaring in triumph. In my rearview mirror, I saw it all. The crowd erupting, Elaine frozen in shock, Harold nodding slowly, and Mina standing tall in the center of the courtyard, watching her father leave on his own terms. I drove home, parked the tractor in my driveway where everyone in the neighborhood could see it, left it there, engine ticking as it cooled, that bright red paint gleaming in the afternoon sun.